President, please be seated. The chamber is now back in session, and the chamber gives the floor to Defense Counsel for the accused Nguyen Chie to put questions to the civil party. You may now proceed, Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Your Honors, Counsel, and good afternoon, Madam Civil Party. I have a few questions that I would like to put to you this afternoon. Not very many, just a few. I would like to start with asking you some follow-up questions in respect of the job or activities of your former husband or your late husband. This morning I wrote down that you said your husband, quote, sold livestock such as ducks and chicken, unquote. Is that what you said this morning?
Yes, I answered like that he sold livestock, namely chicken and ducks. He had no other jobs besides that.
So he was a merchant. Did he trade in other goods, other material, other things than livestock? Do you remember?
He did not sell any other goods. He sold only the things I mentioned earlier.
How about medicine? Did he sell medicine to people?
No, he didn't.
This morning you were asked, and I think you said no, whether he also sold opium to people. Do you remember what you said?
No, he didn't sell opium. He sold only livestock, and that was it. No other business.
Are you sure, Madam Civil Party?
Yes, he did not sell any other goods.
Let me confront you, or rather put to you, something you yourself said to investigators of DC Chem, E3/7562, English ERN 011577781, and Khmer 000340881. The DC Chem interviewer asks you the following question. Can you tell us again what your husband did at the time? And you answer, he did not do any business. At that time, he relied on the fact that Yoon could enter and exit Cambodia. He was an opium seller. Do you remember saying this to DC Chem?
I never said like that. I did not know what he sold. What I knew was that he sold livestock. I did not know that he sold opium. There, there was no opium at that time, said the civil party.
I'm not sure about that, Madam Civil Party, but do you have any, would you know of any reason that this investigator of DC Chem would write down that you had told him that your former husband was an opium seller?
I never said like that because my husband did not involve in that business.
Fine, Madam Civil Party. When I just asked you a question whether he bought or sold medicine, you said no, he didn't. Let me confront you with something that your younger sister told one of the DC Chem investigators. It's the President E3/6941, English ERN 011-65890, and Khmer 00418325. When I will not read the whole question because I will come to that later. Did he have his own small business? And your younger sister answers as follows. Yes, he did. He smuggled medicine into our country and sold it here. Can you give a reaction to what your younger sister told DC Chem?
I don't know which one of my sister you are referring to. I knew my husband did not sell the thing you were talking about. What I knew was that he sold only livestock. That was what I knew.
It was Din Ai, your younger sister, who told DC Chem that your husband, or your former husband, or your late husband, sorry, was involved in smuggling medicine. So that's an answer to your question. Let me ask you now what your late husband did before he came to your village. Can you tell us something about that? What was his job, or what were his activities before he came to Cambodia?
He sold livestock. He did not sell any other things. And during the Khmer Rouge regime, he performed the task that was assigned to him. No other business beside that. As I told you, he did not do any other business.
Maybe my question wasn't very clear. I was actually referring to his activities before he became a merchant. But let me ask you the question directly. Was he, at one point in time, a member of a Vietnamese military unit?
Yes, he did. And then he came to live in Cambodia, but I did not know which location he came from.
So he was in fact a Vietnamese soldier, correct?
ត្រឹមត្រូវ
Yes, that is correct.
Do you know for which Vietnamese army he was fighting? Was he fighting either for the South Vietnamese troops of Kieu Thi, or was he a Viet Cong member fighting against the soldiers of Kieu?
គាត់គឺជាកងទ័ពវៀតណាមខាងជើងធាវគីនេះកងវៀតកុងតែវៀតកុងគាត់ជាកងទ័ពវៀតកុងមួយអត់ទេ
ត្រង់វាកង
I did not know whether he was a member of Viet Cong. What I knew was that he came to settle in my village. That's what I knew.
ខាងណាខ្ញុំអត់ដឹងទេ
I did not know which side he belonged to.
I understand. Let me see if I can ask it differently to you. Was he someone who was a communist with not very much sympathy for Americans, American imperialists, and or Lon Nol soldiers, for instance?
នេះហើយចូលរួមវាយប្រយុទ្ធជាមួយខាងទ័ពលន់ណុលឬក៏យ៉ាងម៉េចឧទាហរណ៍
ខ្ញុំមិនដឹងដែរ
I do not know whether he was a communist or not, because I lived in my village and he lived in other areas, so I did not know what he did prior to his coming to my village.
Let me see if I can do it differently one more time. Is it correct that he had family members living in Saigon?
មានបងប្អូនរស់នៅសៃហ្គន
គាត់នៅមែន
Yes, he had family members, but I do not know what years his family members came to live there.
Was he himself also from Saigon? Was he born in Saigon?
កើតនៅសៃហ្គនឬ
កើតយើងនៅពី
He was born in Piem. His birthplace was at Piem. All his parents were also at Piem.
When the North Vietnamese Communist Army, together with the Viet Cong, took over Saigon on 30 April 1975, do you remember whether your husband was very happy or whether he was very sad?
វាយយកខាងត្បូងបានតើប្តីលោកស្រីពេលហ្នឹងគាត់កើតទុក្ខឬក៏គាត់សប្បាយ
គាត់មានអី
He was normal, but I do not know which side that he served in the army for.
I understand, Madam Civil Party, not any problem. Let me move on to the next subject. This morning, I wrote down an answer to a question from the prosecution. He asked what happened to the Vietnamese siblings of your husband. And then I think you answered, quote unquote, they were Vietnamese in his house. When you said this morning, they were Vietnamese in his house, quote unquote, to whom did you refer?
មាននៅផ្ទះ
They were not at my house. They were in other people's house. They were other people, not my relatives. But they lived also in the same village. And so they did not live with me.
That is how I understood your answer, Madam Civil Party, but I think you were referring to Vietnamese people living in your late husband's house. Is that something you said this morning? Were there other Vietnamese people living in your late husband's house?
តើមានជនជាតិវៀតណាមមករស់នៅក្នុងផ្ទះប្តីរបស់លោកស្រីដែរទេនៅពេលនោះ
មាន
Yes, there were people living in my house. They were my husband's niece and nephews.
ដឹងតែណាមកណៃដែរទេខ្ញុំអត់ដឹងដែរ
And I do not know where they are now.
Still not entirely sure if I understand. Were there Vietnamese family members of your late husband living in his house? Other people from Vietnam?
គ្រាន់តែជនជាតិវៀតណាមមករស់នៅក្នុងទេគឺថាតើពួកគេគឺជាបងប្អូនរបស់ប្តីលោកស្រីឬ
មែន
Yes, there were. They came to live with me and my husband. And later on, they went back. But I did not know where they went to.
Was that in 1975 when they returned? Remember this morning you spoke about Vietnamese people who had to return to Vietnam. Were they among the ones who returned to Vietnam in 1975?
បានត្រឡប់មកពីវៀតណាមវិញមកក្នុងឆ្នាំ1975ឬ
នឹងចិត្តប្រមាណ
I do not know the specific year they returned. What I knew was that they returned, but I could not remember the year.
In other words, your late husband was the only Vietnamese person from his family who had stayed behind in Po Chen Dam. Is that correct?
ពោចិនដាំនឹងដំបូងឡើយចឹងមែនទេ
ចាមែន
Yes, that is correct.
ក៏មកនៅភូមិពូចិនដាំ
He came to live in Po Chen Dam.
This morning, I believe you also said that to investigators. You said that you had urged your husband to go back to Vietnam. Can you tell me a little bit how that went? What was it exactly that you said to him, and why was it that he refused?
គាត់ថាគាត់
He refused to go. He said that he would not go. He said that he's willing to die in Cambodia, to die with me and my child. He would not go back alone. I told him that everyone went back. Why didn't you go back? And he said that he would not go. He would prefer to die in Cambodia together with me and my child.
Thank you, Madam Witness. Let me move on to another subject, and that is something you briefly discussed this morning as well. And that is the period before April 75, or maybe even a little earlier. The period in history that is also sometimes referred to as the Lon Nol era, 1970-1975. Do you remember, let me ask it differently, what do you remember about the treatment of people of Vietnamese origin in the period between 1970 and 1975 in your village?
They were badly treated. They were assigned to carry us and dig canals. And that was what I knew because we didn't live together. We were assigned to work differently. President, Madam, the question is that between 1970 to 1975, that means before the Khmer Rouge regime, how was the Vietnamese people living in your village treated at that time? Answer: there was nothing happened to them. I cannot recall everything because it happened a long time ago.
Do you know whether people of Vietnamese origin in your village during the Lon Nol era were discriminated against?
Yes. People said that they were Vietnamese. But they still lived in the area and there was nothing happened to them.
I'm not entirely sure, Madam Civil Party, if you correctly understand the period that I'm referring to. So let me read to you something someone from your village told investigators of the investigating judge. That is E3/9352. It's the second question in this WRI, Mr. President. It's a statement of someone called Ing On. Do you know Ing On?
I know Ing On. He's still alive and he lives in my village.
Ing On is being asked a question. I will read the whole question to you and his answer. Question: did the people in the village discriminate against them being Vietnamese? And then On answers: previously there was no discrimination. They respected them normally. They married following the normal customs. The discrimination began in the Lon Nol era. End of quote. So, Madam Civil Party, this person that you know says that discrimination against Vietnamese people began in the so-called Lon Nol era. Is that something that you can confirm or not, if you can't?
I could not recall that well.
That's not a problem at all, Madam Civil Party. Let me now turn to the date of, or rather the day that you said your mother saw your late husband being walked away. Now this morning you confirmed that you said it was the rainy season of 77 or late 77. Notwithstanding this answer, I would like to read to you something you said or wrote down rather in the supplementary information form. Mr. President, that is document D22/212A. English ERN 011666071 and Khmer 00584569. This is something you said in June 2010. You said, my husband Chu, aged 42, was Vietnamese. He was a Vietnamese soldier. He was arrested and taken to be killed by the Khmer Rouge in 1978. There is some confusion, Madam Civil Party, whether it was 77 or rather 78. Could I ask you to think one more time whether in your recollection it was 77 or rather 78?
It was in 1977. Yes, as I said, it was in 1977, not 1977. At that time, I was harvesting rice.
Thank you, Madam Civil Party. Let me follow up with one question. Have you ever heard of something...
Sorry, Counsel, can we just clarify the record? I've heard 77 twice. She said it was in 77, not in 77. So, at least in English, or did I misunderstand? Yeah. So, from the translators, what I heard was, I'm sure it was in 77, not in 77. So what did she say?
Madam Civil Party, was it 77 or was it 78?
What I know is that it was in 1970, says the Civil Party. I cannot recall the year that well. It happened several years ago.
Maybe I misheard, but I heard 1970. Prosecution is nodding. Madam Civil Party, did you mean 1977?
Yes, that's what I meant. It was not 1978, but it was 1977.
Thank you, Madam Civil Party. Let me follow up with something in this respect that another witness testified to. He also talked about late 76, early 77. That is witness T2 TCW 848 Teng Hui. But he places these arrests or walking away, whatever you would like to call it, before something that he calls, quote unquote, the Sao Pim event. Have you ever heard of something called the Sao Pim event?
No, I never heard about it. I never heard of anything to do with Sao Pim. I didn't even understand your question.
That is no problem, Madam Civil Party. He also, the same witness, said that the walking away of your late husband took place, quote unquote, before the Southwest group purged the East group, unquote. That is in document E3/5244. Madam Civil Party, you answered a question earlier this morning from the National Co-Prosecutor that you said that the Khmer Rouge came in 1977. Is it possible that you meant not the Khmer Rouge but cadres from an area called the Southwest?
ខ្ញុំអាច
I may know something about that. Yes, he did involve in that event, although I cannot recall all the details.
Who was he that you just referred to? He was involved in that event. What did you mean?
I knew people were involved in it, but I cannot recall any specific details about any individuals. I cannot recall it at all.
Thank you, Madam Civil Party. Let me move to another topic, and that is the following. Have you ever heard, seen, or experienced in any way gunfire or artillery fire or firing of shelling from Vietnamese territory into Cambodia? In other words, have you ever heard the sounds of war?
I only knew about the war that happened during the Khmer Rouge regime, because at that time I fled my village, and after it ended, I returned to my village again. And of course, I did not go any area that you refer to as the fertile land or the Klang in Khmer.
I presume you are referring to the month that Vietnamese troops invaded Democratic Cambodia in December '78. But do you recall Vietnamese tanks, Vietnamese soldiers entering Cambodia in November '77, a year earlier?
I did not know, and I cannot recall it. I forgot about it.
I understand. One last question in this respect, Madam Civil Party. Did you or any of your fellow village members ever have to run or escape the violence of the war? Did you ever have to run for Vietnamese tanks or Vietnamese artillery?
Yes, I did, and I fled to another area and only after the end of the war I returned to my village.
ពីចំនួននោះ
And that was the war that I knew.
រត់ពូនណាមកផ្លោងដៀង
There were heavy shellings in my area, so I had to flee.
And how close was the heavy shelling taking place to your village? How close to your village did those grenades fall? Was it in the village? Was it close to the village? Do you remember?
ធ្លាក់ទៅ
The shellings actually fall far from my village, but I was afraid, so I took my family members to flee from my village. I remained in the other area until the fall of the regime.
But how far was it from your village? Was it 100 meters away? Was it a kilometer away? Was it more to the next village? Do you remember?
អត់ចាំ
No, I cannot recall that. However, I fled to the nearby area, and it was not far from my native home. Sometimes I fled to the nearby village and stayed there for a day or two, and I returned.
Do you know whether any people living in your village had been injured or wounded by the gun or artillery fire?
I did not know about that, but by that time I had fled. I didn't stay behind. I had fled to another village.
វាយទៅបានខ្ញុំមកវិញ
And as I said, I only returned after the fall of the regime.
Thank you, Madam Civil Party. I think my last subject. Can you tell us again exactly how you heard this thing about children of Vietnamese mothers were targeted and children of Khmer mothers were not targeted? Who was it exactly that said that? How did you hear this? Can you give us some more details about it, please?
The Cambodian children were not taken away, only the Vietnamese children were taken away, including all the children of a large knee. None of the children of their children were spared. As for other families, they did not have any children. Only large knee's family had several children. That's all I know.
I understand, but that's something that you've seen or heard. But what I'm trying to find out whether that was a conclusion from you and the villagers, or whether it was something that you heard someone say, for instance, in a meeting, maybe on the radio, anywhere.
No, I did not hear it. What I heard is that when they were taken away and they never returned, and I did not know where they were taken to.
I understand. Let me try it one last time. Was there anyone, maybe a village chief or maybe someone from a security office or a soldier or anyone from the quote-unquote Khmer Rouge that said that children of Vietnamese mothers were not safe? Do you remember?
ដែលគេនិយាយអញ្ចឹងតើលោកស្រីនឹកឃើញថានរណាម្នាក់ប្រាប់លោកស្រីអញ្ចឹងទេ
Yes. And what I know is that if the mother was Vietnamese, the children would be taken away as well, and only the father remained, and none of the children were spared.
ដឹងនៅប៉ុណ្ណឹង
That's all I know about this matter.
I understand, Madam Civil Party. I think you've said that a few times now, but I'm trying to understand whether this is something that you and the villagers concluded because it happened, or whether it was something that you heard someone say, or maybe you heard it in a meeting or on the radio. Do you understand the difference between the two?
ឬតាមស្ដាប់ការស្ដាប់វិទ្យុតើលោកស្រីយល់ពីភាពខុសគ្នានេះដែរឬទេ
ខ្ញុំដឹង
I have said what I knew about it. I knew that their children, all their children were taken away, and I did not know anything else.
ចាំផង
And I also cannot recall anything else.
Thank you, Madam Civil Party. My very last question, that's a very small question. Your daughter, was she born in 1970? In other words, between 75 and 79, she was about between 5 and 9 years old.
9 years old. Her age was about 7 to 8 years old. She is now 45 years old.
The reason I'm asking, and this is my last question, Madam Civil Party, is that your mother, her grandmother, have told the investigators E3/7598 that your daughter was little then, and quote unquote she didn't know anything. Is that correct? Is it correct that your daughter didn't really know anything about what happened between 1975 and 79?
1975 I cannot recall that. I cannot recall the month or the year.
Thank you very much, Madam Civil Party. Thank you, Mr. President. We have no further questions.
Thank you, Counsel. The Chamber now hands the floor to the defense team for Keo Sampon to put questions to this civil party. You may proceed.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning to everyone, and good morning to you, Mrs. Dong-eun. My name is Anta Gise, and I'm International Co-Counsel for Mr. Keo Sampan. In this capacity, I'll put some very brief supplementary questions to you in relation to what you have told the Chamber today. I would like us to talk about the events in your village. You told the President that you were interviewed by investigators from the Office of Co-Investigating Judges. Do you also recall having been interviewed by persons working for an organization called DCCAM?
Yes. I was interviewed at my house
Est-ce que vous vous souvenez de la date?
Do you recall the date of that interview?
ខ្ញុំអត់ចាំ
No, I cannot recall it. It happened quite a long time ago.
Si je vous dis que c'était
If I were to tell you that it was in February 2000, would that refresh your memory?
No, I cannot recall that. I forget about it.
Est-ce que vous vous souvenez
Do you recall whether that interview was recorded on a cassette as an audio recording?
ក្នុងថត
Yes, there was an audio record of the interview.
Je vous pose ces questions
I put this question to you for purposes of clarification, Madam Civil Party, because in answer to a question put to you by my colleague Kope, saying what you heard regarding the occupations of your husband, and you said, I never said that regarding his work as a vendor of pianos. I would like to read out to you an extract of your interview with the DCCAM official, and it is document E3/7562. And I will read out to you an extract in English because there's no French version of the extract. The ERN in English is 011-57781. And the ERN in Khmer is 000034081. And this was a question that was put to you.
Can you tell us again what your husband did at that time? Answer. He did not do any business. At that time, he relied on the fact that Yoon could enter and exit Cambodia. He was an opium seller. Question. Really? Answer. Yes. During that period, he entered and exited Cambodia. He had nothing else to do. He just stayed at home and the money flew to our home. People came to buy at our home to export to Vietnam. Question. Did people come to buy opium? Answer. Yes, they did. He did not do any other business. Question. How much did he earn selling it at a time? Answer. He earned much money. At the time, Yoon kept flowing to Cambodia. They just came to buy it. Question. Did he earn much money? Answer. Yes, he did. Fin de citation.
End of quote. My question to you, Mrs. Dean Earn, is as follows. Is this a rather long extract of your interview with DCCAM something that refreshes your memory? Or do you still stand by your statement that your husband sold ducks?
គាត់លក់មែន
Civil Party. That's all I knew, that he sold that, and I did not know about any other business. I only knew that he sold duck and chicken.
លក់ក៏គាត់មិនដែលទៅឆ្ងាយ
And he only sold it at the house as they came to buy it at the house.
Est-ce que dans ces conditions,
Under those circumstances, do you have any explanations regarding the extract I've just read out to you? Can you explain how come we have a statement and this is an audio transcript of what you stated? Can you explain the difference between the two versions?
យល់ពួកខ្ញុំដឹងតែប៉ុណ្ណឹងមែន
I have said what I knew and I did not know anything else. I didn't know what else he sold. President, National Political Lawyer for Civil Parties, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. President. In fact, Madam Civil Party responded to this kind of a question. And the question by Antaguse, that is the last two questions, were actually put to the civil party by Councillor Copper. And that is just my observation, Mr. President.
pour répondre très brièvement,
To briefly respond to that remark, I would say that my colleague Kope hadn't quoted the passage we have just cited in its entirety. It is important to remind the witness of a longer extract of that interview record to refresh her memory. Let me continue to wrap things up. Unfortunately, I do not have the entire version of that audio transcript, but I am speaking under the supervision of the parties. Still, with regard to the same interview by DCCAM, since you say that you are standing by your statement that you didn't know what his activities were, and yet in the ERN of the same document in Khmer, since we have a Khmer version, 00034,084, you give details, very precise details on the manner in which the opium was packaged, and the Khmer ERN is 00034,082, and this is another ERN. In this particular ERN, you point out that it is important that things had been done in secret so that the local authorities wouldn't know anything about that, because there was a risk of imprisonment. So this is my last point in this matter. Does this refresh your memory that there were some clandestine activities by your husband, and he had to conceal these activities because he didn't want to expose himself to the risk of imprisonment? Does this refresh your memory?
No, I cannot recall that. The event took place many years ago, and I am now 75 years old, so my memory does not serve me that well. And of course, my husband did not involve with the sale of that substance, as you said.
Monsieur le Président, je n'ai pas de...
Mr. President, I have no further questions for the civil party.
President, thank you. And Madam Dong Eun, you now have an opportunity to make a victim's impact statement for the crimes alleged against the two accused, Nunchi and Khieu Sampon, and which happened during the Democratic Cambodia regime, and that led you to become a civil party to claim for moral and collective reparations concerning the harms inflicted upon you, physically, materially, and psychologically, which are the direct impacts of the crimes. And if you wish to do so, you have the floor now. I was mistreated. I was forced to do hard labor to transplant seedlings in the rice fields, and my body physically deteriorates until the present time. And the older I get, the weaker I become. Mr. President, I actually made a request through the bench that I should put questions directly to the civil party. That is in reference to document E1/37.1.1. As I stated that this civil party doesn't speak much, and for that reason I request to put some questions to her to lead her in making such a response. President, as you are aware, Council, this chamber prohibits all parties to put any leading questions to the civil party. In fact, you may put questions to the civil party, but not the leading ones. But my apology, Mr. President. Maybe I made a mistake in my statement just then. And indeed, I'd like to put some questions to the civil party in relation to her suffering. President, you may proceed. Madam Civil Party, I'd like to put the following question to you. When you lost your husband, Tep Chun Alice Chui, and your son, Mon Meng, during the Khmer Rouge regime, how do you feel? Please express your suffering or your feeling to the court. Answer, I can respond to that. I have a great pain for the loss, and I was forced to engage in all kinds of tasks. I was used without any break time to engage in earth digging, in building dikes in the rice fields. And at the same time, I lost my child and my husband. And that is a great pain for me. And when I think about it, it is vividly in front of me. And I also feel miserable and lonely when I lost my husband. And this is compounded by the fact that I am poor. Question. And after the fall of the Khmer Rouge regime, that is on the 7th January 1979, can you describe to the court of your living condition when you are by yourself with the loss of your husband and child? answer. I could hardly earn a living, and my feeling was constantly about my husband and my son. I could hardly feed myself from what I earned each day. Question. And lastly, Madam, do you have anything else to add? Civil party. I'd like to seek some assistance from the court since I am very poor. I could hardly afford myself with food on a daily basis. I am old and I cannot use my physical strength to earn my living. I also have difficulty in walking. Big Ong, I don't have any further question for you, Madam Civil Party and Mr. President. I am done. President, Madam Dong Eun, the Chamber is grateful of your time and the victims' impact statement that you have just provided, and the hearing of your testimony is now concluded, and it may contribute to ascertainment of the truth in this case. You may therefore return to your home or wherever you wish to return to, and we wish you all the very best. And the Chamber would also like to thank Madame Tep Thida, the TPO staff, for your support given to this civil party during her testimony. For this whole day, you may also be excused. Court officer, in collaboration with the visual staff, please make necessary transportation arrangement for Dong Eun to return to her house or wherever she wishes to go to. And after the break, we will hear testimony of the witness to TCW 1009, and this witness has Mueang Sawan as a duty counsel. Let we have a short break, and we have a break now and resumed at 3 o'clock. The court is now in recess.